Zimbabwe is a failed state. One of the consequences of that is we have an incredibly corrupt, incompetent, and tyrannical regime. And we've been stuck with it for the last 44 years. And in that period, the corruption has got worse and worse. This is an area of view of Beira Border Post in Mozambique. The lorries we are seeing down this road are coming from Zimbabwe, carrying minerals, heading straight for the ship in Beira to be shipped to China. The level of the looting is absolutely shocking. Kilometers. Shocking. One is tempted to say, no, this is not true. Well, it is true. And here we have got one of the Zimbabwe human rights activists who has been particularly concerned about the looting of Zimbabwe's resources. And he can explain what is happening here.
So the mining sector in Zimbabwe is a huge crime scene where a presence of resources has attracted social evils, including land grabbing, water grabbing. Because we are having an El Nino, which has seriously affected food security in the country. One thing we must know is that as we have become the biggest producer of lithium in the country. Lithium consumes a lot of water, and where lithium is being mined, they have grabbed the water from the people and worsened even an already adverse situation. Romonzi is an example. Bikita is another example. Puhera, Sabisa, all these places. And then when you look at how these discoveries of resources are benefiting the local people, you come to a very distressful realization that the mineral resources belong to a few individuals holding the levers of the state. So, to make sure that nobody can expose the corruption, they have put in place pillars of repression in every area where there are minerals. First, the president's office is there to make sure that there is no civil society activity in that area. If you are to be allowed to operate in that area, you must sign a memorandum of misunderstanding with them to show them that you are not going to ruffle the feathers of those who are benefiting from the extraction of that resource. And therein comes even the PVO bill. It's all meant to restrict Zimbabweans from having an interest in their natural resources in terms of who is benefiting, how are the resources shared among the stakeholders. So they've undermined even our law enforcement agents. I can tell you that at our borders, resources, there are many trucks which are leaving this country without declaring anything. There is a very high-ranking official, whether it's an official or it's not an official, I don't know, but name with hell, who drove to Fox Border Post, where trucks with lithium had been withheld because they did not have the necessary documentation. And that person went and threatened immigration officials, threatened the Zimbabwe officials to allow those trucks to pass. Those who have been monitoring developments in the lithium sector, we've been following what we've been posting, will know that When we started exporting lithium around 2022, we raised the alarm that the lithium is being looted. At that point, the trucks which were carrying the lithium were not closed. They were not using tents. Everything was in the open. But when Zimbabweans began to take pictures and showing that, look at the amount, the volume of lithium leaving the country, an instruction was given that whosoever is carrying lithium must make sure that it's either in a container or it is covered by a tent. So today it sounds like there is no lithium leaving Zimbabwe. I want you also to know that only those moments when the spirit of Neander, decides to overturn those trucks, that's when you begin to see, oh, there was black granite, there is chrome in this truck, and all those things. The other thing I would like also to add is the issue of diamonds. The person who is buying all our diamonds is a criminal. He's called Basilica. He's an Italian guy. He's an arms dealer. About a year or two ago, he was arrested in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where he had gone there to facilitate arms trade. The current crisis in the DRC has been brewing for a while, and that guy was in DRC. He was arrested and detained for about 12 days. He's the same guy who is taking all Zimbabwe's rough diamonds to Dubai. And if you go to Marange, where the diamonds are coming from, there is screaming poverty. There is also a lot of things to do with valuation.
Well, we can go on and on about that one. But if you look closely, that is what Farai Mago was talking about there. The trucks, as we can see there, they've all got covers. So you do not see what they're carrying. Most of those will no doubt be carrying lithium. As a nation, we cannot afford this. And what makes this situation particularly disappointing is that part of the ill-gotten wealth is being used to bankroll the regime, the dictatorship. Many people believe that Mnangagwa must have spent at least $5 billion in last year's elections, in bribes alone. Because he was bribing from the povo, who were bussed in from one rally to another and given boxes of chicken and chips and a soft drink. To the chiefs and the headmen, the chiefs were getting twin cab trucks. The higher you go, the more you are spending. Church leaders were getting trucks, some of them were getting farms. Judges got $400,000 housing loan just a few weeks before the elections. And of course, Mugabe, when Mnangagwa knew he didn't want the politicians in parliament and in the Senate asking the pertinent question, where is all this money coming from? So what did he do? In November 2022, all MPs and senators got a 40,000 housing loan. Varamrom. And it did shut them up all right. The amount of money that Mnangagwa must have spent on these chicken and chips, hiring buses to ferry people from one rally to another, right up to all these housing loans, which we all know they were not housing loans at all. No one is expected to repay those loans. Must have costed him $5 billion. Where the devil is he getting all that money from? Answer: he's getting his cut from all this grand wholesale looting of the country's wealth. And he's using it to bribe various officials to make sure that Zanu PF stays in power. And the bribes have reached the point where it's bribing the opposition too. There can be no doubt that Zimbabwe's opposition has been totally and utterly useless because the regime has bribed the leaders in the opposition. The most clear-cut case, of course, of that bribery is the way Mugabe gave the opposition leaders the trappings of high office, made sure they were all spoiled rotten. The E-Class Mercedes-Benz ministerial limos to the 30 or so MDC ministers and deputy ministers, and then the two prime ministers and the prime minister himself. The very generous salaries and allowances to all the MDC MPs and senators in the GNU, and to Morgan Tsvangirai himself, the $4 million Highlands mansion, etc., etc. And in return, the MDC guys forgot about the reforms, completely forgot about them. Even the constant nagging from SADC leaders, notably South Africa's Minister Lindiwe Zulu, to get MDC guys to implement the reforms, failed to get them to do anything. That is bribery at a grand scale. And so now the country finds itself in a situation where Zanu PF is deeply entrenched in power. Getting to dismantle this Zanu PF dictatorship is becoming mission impossible, because Zanu PF is deeply entrenched and is now able to bribe officials at all the various levels. But worst of all, we have got a problem with the electorate itself. It is tragic that the Zimbabwe electorate have been brainwashed so thoroughly that they honestly cannot think for themselves anymore. There is no denying that the Zimbabwe elections are flawed. And to put it, as David Coulthard did, so flawed, the only logical thing to do is to stop participating in these flawed elections. But try to tell that to our electorate has become mission impossible. And they can't see it even for themselves. They've been so thoroughly brainwashed that Chamisa had absolutely no problem conning them, 2 million of them, to participate in last year's elections on the basis of an idiotic lie, like I've plugged all the vote rigging loopholes. 2 million participated in the vote and voted for Chamisa last year. And some 3 to 4 million Zimbabweans in the diaspora were cheering and bankrolling that election process. How anyone at all can believe in such an idiotic lie, they just believe. But that's where we are. I believe Zanu PF dictatorship, deeply entrenched as it is, well-funded as it is, can still be dismantled if we can get this Chamisa Chete brigade, 2 million of them, to open their eyes and their minds. And see for themselves that they are being taken for a ride. That MDC, Triple C guys have long ago stopped fighting for democratic change in Zimbabwe. They are now part and parcel of the Zanu PF dictatorship. They participated in last year's elections out of greed. And even after SADC and the AU said these election processes were flawed, MDC, Triple C guys who had won the few seats in the gravy train, then insisted in taking them up, claiming that these were liberated zones. Liberated zones, yes. Did those urban seats have a separate verified voters roll? Of course not. Zanu PF has been very careful to make sure that it bribes the opposition to participate in these flawed elections to give itself legitimacy. Mnangagwa, in fact, in 2018, went one step further. He created Pollard purely to reward those opposition leaders who had contested the presidential elections, and they'd come up and said the election process was free, fair, and credible, and Mnangagwa was a legitimate winner. They were considered members of Pollard, and they got additional benefits. They were also given trucks, and some believe they were even given diplomatic passports. And they were getting allowances for various tasks that the regime set for them. And it is, of course, that motive that motivated more people to participate in last year's elections. The only thing was, of course, Mnangagwa realized that there was going to be a scramble for the presidential race. Many with an eye of becoming members of the Pollard. And so the regime deliberately raised the deposit required to participate, to contest as president, was US $20,000. Many tried to raise the money and they failed. And that is the only reason why the number was ultimately limited to only 11 presidential candidates. Otherwise, If it had not been for the steep fee, I think we would have been looking at over 100 even presidential candidates. And no doubt all the losers would have queued up to sign, if need be, a piece of paper saying the elections were free, fair, and credible. And Mnangagwa won the elections, just to be Pollard. And you get a twin cab truck, diplomatic passport, and God knows what else. That is the unfortunate reality in Zimbabwe. But like I said, we could still dismantle this dictatorship if only we can get this brainwashed Chamisa Chete Chete brigade to open their eyes and realize that the election process in Zimbabwe is flawed, is illegal, and the only logical step is to withdraw. Getting them to open their eyes to see that simple reality is the biggest challenge we face between now and 2028. Meanwhile, yes, the 60-kilometer long queue of trucks from Zimbabwe to Beira will continue. And probably it's working round the clock. And some of that looted money will go straight into Mnangagwa's re-election war chest. That is the political challenge we face in Zimbabwe. The looting is unbelievable, but it is happening. That is the reality. I'd like to close this with a reminder from Margaret Thatcher talking about the same problem of bad governance.
Countries are not rich in proportion to their natural resources. If they were, Russia would now be the richest country in the world. Angola would be very rich, and there are many other countries that have a lot of natural resources, but they have not had an enterprise economy to develop those resources. Russia has everything: oil, gas, diamonds, platinum, gold, silver, timber, marvelous soil, but has been poor. She's also, on the second point, got very bad environment, the Aral Sea. I remember going to one communist country in about the 60s and seeing a pover coming out of a chimney of brown gas, which of course is a nitrous gas. And I was absolutely horrified. I said, well, what are you doing letting that happen? The lungs of the people must be terrible. This is acid. You can't let that go on. Tact has never been my strong point, as you know. And it is the countries that have had the wrong system, which have not created the wealth, have not cared about people. Look at the other side. Japan, no natural resources. Switzerland, no natural resources. Taiwan, no natural resources. It is the political system which enhances the enterprise of the people and gives it a framework within which to operate, which will deal with this poverty.
Of course, she is right. We have got a failed political system. We have got a dictatorship that is now staying in power by looting the nation's wealth to bankroll its stay in power. We have got to fight that system. we have a challenge before us. Unless we can dismantle this Zanu PF dictatorship, we are in trouble. We are in deep, deep trouble. Thank you very much for joining me this afternoon, and have a good day.